Hello and welcome to Mona Lisa Has No Eyebrows, a show about art, artists, and artworks, and the wacky weirdos and wahoos within. My name is Michael, and I'm joined here by Stephanie and May. And each episode, we share one fact each about artists, arts, and artworks, and discuss it along the way. So without further ado, first fact, and that's my fact. And that is that Andy Warhol was taught how to draw on a computer by Steve Jobs at Yoko Ono's son's birthday party on a Macintosh that Jobs had just given to her son. And when he first tried to use the mouse, because it was new technology, he swished it in the air. And then eventually Jobs taught him how to draw, and after a few minutes of concentrated effort, he called his friend Keith Haring over to show him that he drew a circle.
Wow. So many people in one
right.
room.
And so that's the thing. So, and actually Steve Jobs was a last minute invite. So he wasn't even the main guy, because at the party were people like Walter Cronkite, who was probably at the time, the most famous man in America, right? He was like, the house's name. And John Cage was there, who we discussed before. And people like Andy Warhol, Keith Haring, and obviously Yoko Ono. So it was a star-studded party, and Macintosh had just come out, and just had the first, like, I think it was the first computer that had the capacity for drawing. They had the graphic user interface, right? That allegedly they ripped off of Xerox, and the computer mouse, which was brand new technology as well. So he was invited at the last minute, and he grabbed the last minute gift, which was a Macintosh he had laying, and he brought it over. And it actually, I told you guys that I have a second part to this fact that I was gonna tell you. That was gonna be a surprise, right? And that actually, the second part is that it actually spawned a big kind of love of digital art in Warhol, and that he actually later on he became a spokesman for Apple's rival Commodore. They had a computer named Amiga, which I really liked. I used to play as a child, a bunch of games on it.
Oh, really?
And so because Apple could only, Apple could only display, I think, it wasn't as many colors as Amiga. Amiga could display 4,096 colors, which is amazing back in the day, right? So he really liked it, and he became enthusiast of digital art. And there's this famous presentation where he does art of Debbie Harry from the band Blondie. I don't know if you guys saw it. But
Yeah, I watched it. Yeah.
And it's funny because to call it art, it's kind of weird, because it's like the like grayscale image of her that he just fills in with the paint bucket, right? Like like you have in like every computer, like MS Paint or whatever. And it's funny to watch, because it actually, these days it's like instant. You click it and it instantly fills up. But back, if you watch the presentation, it like spreads like real paint, almost like you're pouring it into a form. So so that was fun. And actually, so basically what happened is that eventually someone saw the video, and they're like, what's up? Where's all this artwork? Where's all this digital artwork that he created, right? And it turns out it was on floppy disks, like back in the back of closet in his museum. There was 40 floppy disks, and they were like so badly damaged and like so outdated, because they weren't in like computer floppy disks. They were like Commodore floppy disks, that they had to spend like years and years of like painstaking, reproduction to get the images from. And they found a bunch of images, 28 digital works they extracted. And actually it was scientists at Carnegie Mellon, which is where Andy Warhol went to school. So that's a pretty fun connection. And also funny thing is that the images are approximately 200 by 300 pixels. Which, exactly. It's like this much,
Like,
right?
woo!
So, and you have a Campbell soup can, self-portrait, Sandro Botticelli Venus, and that kind of stuff. So so Andy Warhol was super into digital art.
One thing that I did find when I was researching was this GeekWire article where they talk about, you know, the Warhol Museum in Pittsburgh. And so they talk about the computer, all that kind of stuff. But there was also some stuff about, there's some displays where they have like a thing where they kind of recreate, you know, when he was doing his factory, he did the like series of these short films called like screenshots or test shots, something like that, where he just has these like, you know, people, their headshots, and that's all it is. So they have like a display where you can, you know, be in front of a camera and you become one of Warhol's test shots or whatever. So, I mean, I didn't know before Michael presented this fact, like how much he was into technology. But I did think it was funny that after he got introduced to digital, you know, computers, he ended up going with a rival company.
Yeah.
And you know, granted, it is a better computer, but it's kind of like the Betamax and VHS, right? Where the superior technology didn't end up taking over because, I don't know. I mean, Amiga, was it like much more expensive than the Mac or something like that back in the day?
So I actually have a little fact to maybe answer that. So I read on Wikipedia that when Steve Jobs first approached, whether it be through this birthday party, spontaneous, hey, check this out, or hey, Andy, I want you to use my Mac to make art, Andy Warhol tried it out, and he wasn't as excited about using it because, you know, Andy Warhol color, pop art is all about like color. And at the time, the Mac actually didn't have the capacity for color. So he was only able to create grayscale images on the Mac. And so the Amiga computer did have the capacity for color. And so I think that's part of why he kind of was like, well, you know, if I have to choose between the two, I'm going to go with what I can make color images of. So.
And the presentation is so funny because of how Andy Warhol speaks, his monotone voice.
I know, he's so funny when he talks.
At one point, you know, like the host of this presentation of the Amiga computer dressed all in tuxedo and stuff, and he goes like, oh, you find this very spontaneous, don't you? And Andy Warhol goes like, yes, it's great. It's such a great thing. And then the audience laughs. Everybody just laughs. Because he sounds so sarcastic, but he did really like it. He really did like it.
Yeah, no, I don't know if you guys watched any of his other interviews that he's had with like other TV channels and news channels that were just like, Andy, tell us about who you are. But exactly what Michael's saying is like, he's very monotone and just very like short answered and yes, it's nice. And it's like, why do you talk like that? But you know, every artist obviously has their own personality. It's funny, when I first learned about Andy Warhol in printmaking, I just knew of like his prints, so I never really researched the guy himself. And now when I had to research for our show, I was like, why is he just so? It's interesting to hear his personality and see what he was all about. But I think the public kind of played off of that too, the way that his personality was kind of mysterious, but also like, I don't know, not confusing, but for someone that plays with so much color in their work, and then
very aloof.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I guess it all just comes out in his work. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
But so I think it'd be hard to talk about Andy Warhol without talking about his almost assassination. It's like a big part of what made him famous, I think, right? That's almost any artist, I guess, near death or death is what makes them famous. But yeah, so this I guess a feminist lady went up to his factory and tried to shoot him, and I read the description because I didn't know this. So basically there was Morrissey, the musician, was there, and he told her to leave. And then he just went to the bathroom while Warhol was on the phone, and she shot him 3 shots. First 2 missed. The second one went through both lungs, spleen, stomach, liver, esophagus.
Whoa.
And then shot the art critic in the back, Yayoi Maier, in the hip, right? And then her gun jammed. And then Warhol's manager, Fred Hughes, came over, and it says Hughes asked her to leave, which she did, leaving behind a paper bag with her address book on a table.
Wow, I didn't know that.
She just fucking shot Andy Warhol, tried to shoot all these guys, and he's like, please leave. And she's like, okay, here's my phone book.
Wow.
My God.
What is going on?
Oh my God. Going back to your original fact, you stated that Keith Haring was at that birthday party. I saw a fact that Andy was actually kind of jealous of Keith Haring because Keith started to make t-shirts from designs that he made on the computer, and he was selling them.
I see.
And Andy was like, why is that not happening for me?
Yeah. Also, I have a fact that's kind of related. It's not really about art, but it's about floppy disks. Since we were talking about all the floppy disks. And this actually comes from the podcast that inspired this one, No Such Thing as a Fish. So, Boeing's 747 aircrafts still receiving critical software updates through 3.5 floppy disks.
Oh my God. Yes.
Because they were designed in 1988 and they're still loading up, like, Redder or whatever through floppy disks. They have binders full of, 20 or 40 disks that they have to load up.
Wow. God. So that is really scary.
Yeah, and right now, Boeing was found guilty of all the plane crashes. So I'm sure they're gonna change to VHS.
It's interesting that so here's kind of to spin off of that. First off, that's really scary.
Yeah.
Yes.
But when that research was being done to extract Andy's paintings on the computer that they didn't know about, because so what I learned was that the reasons they didn't find all of Andy's digital computer paintings right away was because they were actually stored on the same floppy disk that had the software that he was working on. So there wasn't a separate file with them in it. So they were saying in the documentary that they wanted to kind of get it all out in one go, plug in the floppy disk, get everything out, and then not have to keep going back and inserting that floppy disk, because that technology is so delicate nowadays. So it's very scary to think about Boeing using it every time. But
really quick, first digital artist. Have you guys heard about him? Harold Cohen.
No, I have not.
So he created a program called Aaron, AARAON. Apparently it's not an acronym. He just chose it, so it's double A. So it's a first program that he ever created, and then he could go alphabetically. But he never created another program ever. Anyway, so he created it to draw art, and it's just these abstract images really. And he said basically, he asks if what Aaron is making is not art, what is it exactly? And in what ways, other than its origin, does it differ from the real thing? If it is not thinking, then what exactly is it doing?
Well, it's like all the art that's being created by AI right now. And in that case, it is thinking, it's processing. It's, I guess, Aaron or Aaron is maybe I guess it can't do those functions on its own, right? It needs some kind of input, the artist starts something and maybe it kind of goes off. But today's AI definitely can make art that can fool a lot of people. So it's pretty interesting how that's going.
It's like iRobot with Will Smith. Have you seen that? There's that.
I have seen that, yes.
There's that scene where the robot asks Will Smith, they're having a debate, and Will Smith goes can a robot make a masterpiece of music? Can a robot paint a great picture? And then the robot guy says, can you? And it's sick as burn.
Yeah. I think eventually AI will have to be granted personhood and all that. You saw that movie, Her, by Spike Jonze.
Yeah.
That was a really good movie, and I thought that was very kind of a prescient sort of thing. Yeah.
What about that one robot somewhere in Europe? I can't remember where, that they granted citizenship to. You guys know what I'm talking about?
I didn't know about this.
No.
Yeah, I wonder, maybe I can look it up really quick. It happened like maybe a year or two ago, but there was a robot that they had to give citizenship to.
Interesting.
So the robot's name was Sophia, and in 2017, she became a Saudi Arabian citizen, the first robot to receive citizenship of any country. In November of 2017, Sophia was named the United Nations Development Programme's first ever innovative champion and is the first non-human to be given any United Nation title, taken from Wiki.
Wow.
And now it's time for fact number 2, and that is Stephanie.
Okay, so as you can see from my background, I'm going to be talking about Yayoi Kusama, the Japanese-born artist who really hit her stride in the late 1960s, and she was very much into, the sort of the wild and free art movement and lifestyle of the bohemian artists in New York City. And in 1968, she had founded this church of self-obliteration, and that church presided over like the first homosexual wedding. I mean, it wasn't legal, but I mean, it happened. They had these two dudes there and they got married. And it was, in the late 60s, she was in the New York art scene. And several notable male artists had sort of ripped off ideas that she had started, like soft sculptures, Klaus Oldenburg. And then these like kind of room-sized installations of prints. Andy Warhol apparently did that with his exhibit after seeing her thing. And the mirrored rooms was co-opted by, I forget his name now. I think he was like a photographer or something. And not as famous as Oldenburg or Warhol, but still, a notable New York artist. So anyway, super fascinating character. And also, her whole like chaste romance with Joseph Cornell was a mind blower. And I'm like, wow. And neither of them like sex. So apparently it was like the perfect relationship. It was just like, very, very wild, very wacky. But she did perform the first homosexual wedding, I guess, like in the United States, if not the world, perhaps. So,
did you read why she was kind of asexual?
Because of her dad's infidelity.
Yeah.
Like she came upon him with like one of his mistresses or something like that. And
it said that her mom made her like go and spy on her dad while he was having affairs.
Oh, really?
So she was just like, hey, go watch your dad have sex with mistresses. And so she was traumatized after that.
And her mom was very, like, kind of borderline abusive, if not downright abusive. She had, like, a very sad childhood, and it really marked her. And then, after all her time in the U.S., she went back to Japan, and then she had to check herself into, like, a mental institution because she had attempted suicide twice, because of, various reasons like depression and just feeling like she wasn't being recognized for her work and all those kinds of things. And she's still living there, but she leaves, every day to go to her studio, and she still produces an insane amount of work for a person her age. So I mean, it's kind of inspiring.
That is yeah. Have you guys seen that meme that's like you may not like this, but this is what peak male performance looks like? And it's just no. It's like
I don't think I've seen it.
It's like a picture of like whoever, like a fat guy or skinny guy or like a weird shape, and it's like, you may not like this body, but this is what peak male performance looks like. It's like this meme that was going around, but her living in a mental institution and then going to her studio which is across the street to do her work, and then coming back. It's like, mental institution by night, painting by day. That's what peak artist is. That's peak. With her, we've reached peak artist. You don't get any more artist than that in Japan. Mental institution in Japan, your studio across the street, and you just go back and forth. That, you don't get more artsy than that.
I mean, I was pretty surprised to find out that that's where she's been all these years.
Since what, since 1977.
Yeah,
since 1977. Jesus Christ.
I know. But I mean, it's working for her.
It's working,
Right,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah, right.
So-
Yeah, go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
I was just going to say, like, if you think of other really famous artists that we've lost to mental, what's the word? I don't know, like disasters, like Edvard Munch and Picasso, or not Picasso, Van Gogh, and so on. You know,
So many.
they couldn't handle it, and look at the work that they made before they left too. So with Yayoi, she's so lucky because she gets to handle it and
Right.
continue her practice. Maybe it's also because these artists that weren't able to, maybe it was like back in the day that there wasn't as much help out there. But I think also I heard somewhere, I don't remember if it was in the documentary, but she finds a lot of meditation in repetition, and that's why she spends a lot of time making all of these dotted pieces or making a lot of pieces like her soft sculptures. She finds comfort in it, and so that's also something about art in general. We find comfort in the work that we make. So it is something to consider, especially. So this is something I kind of wanted to bring up, like when Infinity Room came to the Broad. Everyone was like, okay, selfie time. It's time to like go in and take, it's called selfie work at this sense where it's selfie museums, and you go in. And then she had a piece at, oh man, I forget the name of the museum now, but it's in LA. There, she had like her big flower pieces in there. And again, selfie time, like everyone's coming to see the exhibition just so they can take a picture with her piece and put it on Instagram. And it's like, do you guys know that this artist has like, she's in... like it's not just like some random artist that is dishing this out for you to go and take a selfie. It's some real stuff going on in the brain and the mental and the emotion and everything. So I did just want to highlight that and note that, because I think it's important to really know who the artist is before you go and just take a picture in front of the work that they make.
That's a good point. Because I mean, it's so universally appealing, I think, her work. Many people can find access to it for a variety of reasons, like it's colorful or it's fun looking or whatever. But then when you kind of see where it came from, you realize it has a dark side. And that, in a lot of ways, it was therapy for her, and it is therapy for her. So, I mean, it is good to know about that and to respect that and to really, learn more about like where work comes from. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I got to learn a lot more about that, and that was just really fascinating. Enormously talented artist, also so brave. Coming here. Just when she was like barely in her 20s and just really trying to make it. And she was like approaching a lot of galleries and, museums and people, and just was really putting herself out there. She was not a wallflower. Not at all.
I mean, she even crashed the Venice Biennale one year. She brought her own piece and then started selling it. And the organizers of the Biennale came and were like, "Excuse me, what are you doing?" And she's like, "Well, I don't see why I can't sell my work if you're selling others' work." And so, it speaks to how strong-headed she was and how brave, and like you said, she has the talent. She knows what she's doing, and that's also why a lot of artists kind of ripped her off when she was starting off in New York, because she was a woman and men were much more easily filling the galleries, and they saw what she was doing, they knew it was good, and they took it from her. And thank goodness now that she has all of this support and so many people know about her, and we're even talking about her today because she pulled through, and she just kept going, and she kept making work, and she was able to finally get what she deserved.
Hell yeah. And she was at the time she was the highest paid living female artist. She was just surpassed by Jenny Saville, but it's like Jenny Saville pulled $12 million for her painting, and she did $8. So I'll take $8. But speaking of, all you guys mentioned, she came to America. She was so brave, and she actually came because of a letter she saw work by Georgia O'Keeffe. She wrote out a letter to her, and she encouraged her to come over. And again, Georgia O'Keeffe was one of those artists who suffered from depression, and lost her because of that, basically, and was hospitalized many times. And Yayoi, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but she's still going. I mean, all the artists that we are talking about, coincidentally, they were born within a few years of each other. It was like 1920s, like 26 to 28, and she's the only one still alive out of all of them.
Wow.
So she's she's the real survivor. She's the real deal. And like I said, peak artist. And no, she's so incredible. And let's see, I got Andy Warhol. I said they all connect, right?
Oh yeah.
So they were good friends until she, Stephanie said, right? She accused him of stealing her work. And what I've read is that she covered a rowing boat with phalluses and wallpapered the room with repeated identical photocopies. And then Warhol used wallpaper at a show, repeating vibrant screen print of a cow. And and then so she accused him of stealing her ideas.
Well, so I think in the documentary they say, like, Warhol came to her show and was like, wow, this is really cool, I like it. And then, like, boom, next show he does, it's there. Now the thing though is, the famous quote, right? Like, good artists borrow, great artists steal. I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about that adage. It's like I mean, nothing is ever born out of a vacuum.
Yeah,
we're all influenced by something, right? I mean, whether it's something we see in passing or something we've really studied. So I mean, the thing is like, there's really no copyright on an idea, so even though she felt wronged, I guess the tragedy is not that they copied her, because it happens all the time. It's that she didn't get credit for being the originator of the idea. So and that's because the circumstances of her sex and her ethnicity, perhaps. But I mean, the origins are very clear when you see it side by side. And even they mentioned, like, Oldenburg, when his show came up with the soft sculptures, like, his wife, who helped him make this stuff, came up to her at a show and was like, we're really sorry. It's like, you know what? I think that's bullshit. If you're going to do that, do not say that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, you did it. You weren't sorry when you were spending months making this stuff,
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So, whatever.
But like I said, like, now, today, we're able to credit her, and we know because people have made the movies and documentaries and articles and all that. So I feel like today she's good. She's able to.
She found vindication in the end. I mean, she's way more famous than Oldenburg or the other guy. Maybe not as famous as Warhol, but
still alive.
She outlived him. So in the end, it's like.
But
she's doing all right.
It's also funny because she was asexual, as we talked about, but much of her work was concerned with kind of genitalia and sex. Like, she had the penis chair, which was made out of just dicks. I think the article I read says it's sculptures coated in phalluses. So that's the classy way to describe it, right? A chair made out of dicks. But also, have you guys seen, this is kind of a little bit obscurer, have you guys seen the orgy garments that she made in the 70s?
Oh, no, I didn't.
No. So they're kind of, these are, it's just like this long kind of garment. I don't know how to describe it, like kind of neck to ankle. that's meant to be worn by like 6-7 people like standing shoulder to shoulder in a row, and they're all have cutout like alternating between like a cutout for breast and cutout for like abs, and then cutout for like genitalia, and then cutout for breast, so there's holes in them. So it's meant to be by several people at once, and they're exposing themselves, and she called them orgy garments.
Oh, wow.
So a lot, yeah, right. A lot of she was so asexual, but a lot of her work was all about sex, even though she had these relationships that she never consummated, like Stephanie mentioned with Joseph Cornell, right?
But the thing with sex is like, I think even if you don't want to have sex, I mean, she was clearly traumatized by sex, so it's something that really affected her. Mm-hmm. So that definitely comes up in her work, so that I don't really find super surprising. It's like, I bet it's something she thought about all the time, mm-hmm. even though it wasn't something she herself wanted to engage in, mm-hmm. But she was very like supportive of other people, engaging in whatever kind of sex they wanted, Mm-hmm. She was totally cool with homosexuals, exactly. And and a lot of happenings that she organized of people mm-hmm. getting naked all the time, mm-hmm. and all that kind of stuff. So it is an interesting dichotomy, that you point out.
Yeah. But yeah, it's, I guess, like Ernest Hemingway said, write about what hurts, right? So that's what she did.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, like what haunts you.
Yeah, and then
yes,
so for 10 years she had a relationship with an artist, Joseph Cornell. Was it 15 years her senior, 25 years her senior, something like that?
Like, I want to say like maybe closer to 25 years. He was a lot older.
And apparently, it said, because I think he still lived with his mom. And it said that she once poured a bucket of water over the couple after discovering them kissing. that brought the relationship to an end.
Yeah, well, so in the documentary, his mom does that, and then he says, "I'm sorry, mother," instead of "I'm sorry, Yayoi," and it's like, hello, like, excuse me. Like, your mom just poured water all over me, and you're saying sorry to your mom? Like, do you not consider me someone like what? Like, so I mean, I understand why at that point you would want to end a relationship.
Clearly, there are some issues. I think we need to save Joseph Cornell for like a Mother's Day episode.
That's funny. It's funny because we, like, without meaning to, we always have like kind of themes, or all our facts are related in some way.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we should do like a themed Mother's Day episode.
I like it. I like it. Yeah. I'm totally down.
And that brings us to fact number 3, which is May's fact.
So my fact is about Vivian Dorothy Maier. She was an American street photographer whose work was discovered and recognized after her death. She worked for about 40 years as a nanny, mostly in Chicago's North Shore, while pursuing photography. So there's this really fabulous documentary called Finding Vivian Maier, and it basically gives you this her story. Basically, this guy stumbles upon her film negatives, and he is totally entranced by them, and so he starts to scan them in and uploads them to the internet on like a Tumblr page or something like that, and people start to comment on it saying, "Wow, so great, these are beautiful, what, like this and that." And then he starts to think, well, I also agree that these photographs are so beautiful. Let's try to get them into a museum. And so then he starts to try to reach out, and all these museums and galleries are saying, like, yes, these works are beautiful, but we're not interested at this time. And so at that point, he starts to think, well, who was she anyways? Because her work is so good, and she didn't pursue trying to get her work into a museum when she was alive. So why? Because it's kind of like, if you're really good at something in art, you typically try to sell your work or try to show or something like that. And she was very reserved about it. She never did. So that kind of speaks to what's so interesting about Vivian is that she worked as a nanny. And what's great in the documentary is they get to interview a lot of the kids that she used to nanny, and they have so many amazing stories about her.
The kids, my God, you know, I thought it was really great that, like, you know, some of the boys that she watched, like, they were the ones that got her the apartment when she was old. You know, they paid for her apartment. Otherwise, she probably would have been homeless. You know, not that like she was all alone and everything. It was kind of sad, but at least she wasn't living on the streets, you know, which she very well might have had to. But then there was that one woman who, when she was a girl being taken care of by her, she was like kind of abused. Like, you know, Vivian would like slap her and like throw her around or whatever. I think this was like kind of toward the end of her nanny career, where maybe she was like finding it harder to like, you know, keep it together, it seems like. You know, before she seemed like this sort of eccentric and fun lady, but I think toward the end she got kind of scary. You know. But yeah, what a fascinating character. And she clearly has the talent and the artistic impulse, but she totally sort of fell apart when it came to like sharing her work, you know, with the outside world. Like, and in the documentary, they talk about how it's looked like she wanted to share it. Like there was that part where she approached someone about making postcards of her work. So it's not like, you know, she was just hoarding it all. I just don't think she knew how to go about it. And there was just no one to help her. Like if she had been in school or whatever, like an instructor might have helped her, like, hey, you should try this and that, whatever. I mean, that's kind of what, that's, I think one of the biggest values of going to art school really is like the relationships and the, you know, connections that you make. Cause you learn things too, of course, but I feel like people with real talent, it's already sort of innately there, because she seems entirely self-taught. I don't think she ever went to any kind of art school or anything like that. But yeah, it was, she's just like a total original, like almost like outsider artist, but clearly with like a more sophisticated and more conventional, you know, like eye, I would say, for photography.
Well, what's oh
no, go ahead, May.
So something that's really prevalent to her practice is the type of camera that she used, right? So she was using the, if you see it over here in my background, she was using the Rolly. And when you view through a camera like that, I actually have one. I forgot to bring it. Should I go grab it really quick?
Do it.
Yes.
Okay, yes. I'll be right back.
Okay. Wow, I can't believe she actually has one.
I know, right?
I've never even seen one of these.
I want one.
I mean, I didn't even really know about it, but then again, I you know, I didn't really get into photography that much.
No, me neither. But I always like those cameras where you have to like look down to take a picture. You know?
Oh,
I think it's one of those.
Yeah, it is. It is. But
the low angle, like chest angle pictures always look better. I hold my cell phone like chest height when I take pictures.
You know what? They actually mentioned that in the biography, how having that angle really lends a sort of like gravitas to.
Sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, we started talking without you. Yeah. So Michael was saying how that is a camera where you have to the angle is lower, so a lot of the figures, you know, you're kind of coming at them and they look like kind of more monumental, and it lends sort of a grandeur to the subjects.
That's awesome. Does that still work? That's like working camera? Awesome.
Yeah. So my professor in undergrad, Roxanne Sexauer, gave me this camera, and I was like, oh my God, amazing. Because, you know, she wasn't using it anymore, and she knew that I was into photo. I took a lot of photo classes in undergrad as well. So, but what I was going to say is that, and it mentions it in the documentary, when you take a photo, like you actually, you know, you take your shot, you look into the viewfinder. You don't hold the camera up. There's nothing back here for you to see through. So it's very discreet, and it's very, it gives you a new observation, a new level of observation. And I think that kind of speaks to who she was. Not only, you know, she had these really interesting stories about herself, calling herself a spy, and saying that, you know, she kind of had like this fake French or German accent. I forget which it was, but
French.
Was it
it was
fake?
French, right?
Yes.
It
yes.
was fake.
I
She
see.
was born in
New
New
York.
York.
I see.
Yeah. So she, you know, she kind of had this kind of weird history going on in her head, and that she was portraying that wasn't really linked up with reality. And I think that kind of speaks to why she was really interested in taking photographs of other people, because she could kind of be whoever she wanted without them realizing. And then when she would take her kids that she was nannying out on these expeditions, they would see it from their eyes and be like, this woman's crazy. But in the mind of an artist, you know, it's very different than what it comes to the reality of this.
Yeah, well, I mean, but her mother was French, so it's not completely like out of left field. And she did spend time in France, but there's really no reason why she should have ever had a French accent, you know, being born and raised in the United States. But it, like May said, it is sort of part of her like mysterious allure, you know. And like you said, you know, she would take pictures of weird things. Like when she was a nanny to Phil Donahue, of all people, for a little while, like he saw her taking a picture like inside a trash can. Like, he's like, but then they show the photos and you see like there's these sort of like naturally, accidentally like artfully arranged objects within the trash can, like a discarded doll or a teddy bear, you know, that has like a sense of pathos and a story that she is able to see and capture, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And going back to what you guys said about you know, her trying to arrange the postcards, trying to sell her work, and then ultimately she like didn't sell it. She took so many pictures and like never showed it, never sold it. I read an article that had like an interesting point about it. Is that, you know, she worked as a nanny in New York City, right? So she was toting all these kids along from like school to home to the store to, you know, the barber to the mall to whatever. And she was just walking the streets and taking pictures. So she was basically getting paid for photography, for being a photographer.
Yeah.
So like, what more did she want, you know? Like,
exactly.
She was basically making money from photography. So,
at least she was able to support herself and indulge in her passion.
Exactly.
Really.
And then I think it was like a YouTube video or something where someone made a interesting comment that I haven't considered before then, is that when, you know, the guys found their artwork, the negatives and all that, most of the film was undeveloped, which means she did not see most of her work. Which is really interesting, right? Especially for an artist, you never see your work.
Right. It speaks again to what you were just saying about like she was being paid to be a nanny, but then on her eyes she was being paid to go around and be a photographer. But then there's the limitation of like, okay, well, if you're only getting the salary of a nanny, your lifestyle allows you to focus on your work, but in terms of financially, you don't get to really achieve the full, you know, epitome of what your work really could have been. And I think that's what's so great about the documentary. And they make this point, they argue this point, because a lot of the kids that they interviewed said that they thought Vivian would not be happy with the fact that they made this documentary and they put her work up for the public eye. But the other argument of the guy that actually found the negatives and developed everything was saying like, you know, she wanted to show her work on a small scale, and she knew she was good, so why not highlight this really beautiful work and add it to the history of photography and use it as, you know, inspiration for further generations to come? Because I mean, her work is amazing. It really is.
It's really good. It is.
And we'll never know, because she never left any kind of journal or note about what her true wishes were. I mean, if she really didn't want people to mess with her stuff, would there be like notes in there saying, you know, do not touch or destroy upon my death or whatever, you know?
Yeah, good point.
Once you're dead, you don't have control over what happens to your stuff, you know, whether it gets forgotten or it becomes wildly successful, like Van Gogh, you know? I mean, he has the crazy posthumous success, but like, what good is that? You know what I mean? He never had peace or conventional happiness or any of that in his lifetime. And, you know, I think about that. Is that like, you know, is posthumous glory something that like a lot of artists desire? It's like, I don't know, maybe some people do, maybe they feel like they want to be remembered forever by everybody, you know, that kind of fame. But I think most of us, we just want to be able to make the work we want to make and, you know, share it probably. But the idea of being like, you know, some giant artistic icon is probably not what most of us are thinking about or like wishing. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I don't know.
No, I mean, it very, very much so speaks to who she was. Because like I said, you know, she always had these different stories of who she wanted to be in her head. And it was always very mysterious. So she was never trying to be someone that was very open and outgoing and trying to be everyone's friend and, hey, look at, I take these photographs. So she probably did kind of want to be more reserved, but maybe also speaking to what you were saying, she didn't really know what connections to tackle. I don't know. It's always a question to you can't talk to dead people. So.
We can only speculate.
Yeah. I mean, she obviously wanted some privacy because I don't know if they said in the documentary, but she always requested extra locks when she was a nanny, and she also used aliases to get work. And I tried to look for what aliases she used, and I could only find one. It was V. Smith, which isn't very, I don't know if they said any more in the documentary. But yeah, that's not very creative. Not as creative as her photography.
that was her like main alias, but like she also used like a lot of different variations, spellings of Maier, but she always used Maier. But you know, it's like she really did want to disappear, you know, while she for her, the photographs were like the main thing. You know, they always talk about how she was always wearing like very like shapeless clothes. You know, she'd never really try to like, you know, show her figure. I mean, she was not a glamorous person at all. But she must have been a pretty interesting character. She's very tall and, you know, had sort of an eccentric way of dressing and moving. But you know, whether that's affect or, you know, that's just the way she was, it's at the end of the day, people did not know about her work when she was alive. I mean, or very few.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And well, I was talking before that all of our artists, without us meaning to, are connected. And this one is actually connected. There's a man by the name of Jim Dempsey. He's a gallery owner. He represents a lot of her prints now, a lot of her photography. And he actually, before he represented her, he actually met her without knowing who she was.
What?
Yeah, they met. They would meet at a theater, like an art theater that showed Andy Warhol's movies.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was a Chicago art house movie theater, you know, showing independent international classic cinema. And he served as a house manager for many years. And yeah, Andy Warhol, they met, she would come in to see Andy Warhol's movies, screening gems like Empire, Sleep, Kiss, Blowjob, and Lonesome Cowboys. So I haven't seen any of those movies, but apparently they would talk because she would always come there. And he said that he took a note, what you were saying about her clothes. He took a note of her distinctive look. Patent leather two-tone shoes, loose stockings, skirt, usually an androgynous suit jacket, and floppy felt fedora. And then she would talk to him about, you know, whether she liked the movie or not. And then for the next 10 years, he saw her on a weekly basis. And then apparently, you know, the guy discovered her, you know, years later, he became a gallery owner. The guy discovered her negatives and stuff. And they came to him and he was like, once he saw her self-portrait out, he was like, holy shit, this is the same lady.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah. So she would go see Andy Warhol movies. Andy Warhol was my fact. Andy Warhol's director was friends with oh God,
Yayoi
Yayoi. I cannot pronounce
Kusama.
the name. Kusama,
You can just
yeah.
say Kusama.
Kusama,
Maybe that's
Kusama, that's
easier.
easy. That's much easier. But yeah, so again, all our facts are connected for some reason.
Crazy.
I mean, yeah. Does it just mean that it's like 6 degrees of separation, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there are actually very few degrees separating us. Like we might have mutual friends that we don't even know about, right? It's kind of like,
yeah, that's true.
we're all artists in Long Beach, and
Exactly, yeah. And
so who knows?
one last fact: the Jim Dempsey, he called her Frau Blucher or Blucher, based on a character in Young Frankenstein because of her intense directness and her thick accent.
Wow.
Oh, wait, who is that in
Cloris Leachman.
Oh, okay. I remember.
I've seen the movie a few times. I don't remember the actress. I know what she looks like. I wouldn't recognize her in any other movie, I think.
So another interesting thing about the Vivian Maier story was, my God, if her negatives had been found by anybody else,
right,
would this whole outcome have happened? Because this guy is so curious and so meticulous. Like, who would have taken that kind of task on, right? Because he was trying to get like museums interested in her work at first, because he realized there was so much work to be done to like archive all this stuff. But then when he wasn't getting any help, he just decided to do it all himself, at first. And then he started the Kickstarter fund to get the documentary made. And he's not even an artist. He's like a real estate guy.
Yeah.
And he was just looking for some old photographs about the region. And he just saw these old photographs and was like, oh, maybe there's something in there I can use. And then it turns out like he couldn't use any of it for his original project. But then he ended up finding this treasure trove. And then he didn't just stop there. I mean, he tracked down the families that she worked for. She tracked down the kids. And I mean, he really is responsible. What was it? John Maloof, I think was his name. For really bringing her out into the spotlight, whether or not she would have wanted, who knows? But, we know about her work, and, I think we're better for it.
Yeah. And it's that's kind of like the Polish artist that I was talking about last time, right? Stanisław
Tchaikovsky,
right?
Yes.
He had that one person who rediscovered their work and brought it to the public, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. If that one guy hadn't seen his poster, in his case, he definitely wanted people to know about his work. He might have been on the opposite end of the spectrum from Vivian Maier.
That's funny, but that's funny. Yeah, how many other artists are there like that, right?
How many artists are there that haven't been discovered yet?
Yeah, exactly.
There's 3 of us right here.
Exactly.